Since 2001, Harrisburg University has grown again and again. Just last week, the school held a groundbreaking ceremony for its new Health Science Education Center hotel and restaurant. The building will allow for an additional 1,000 students there. Another addition to Harrisburg University, the Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship, or CIE. This will help students start and build companies. Executive Director Jay Mohan is here to tell me more about it. Can you give just a basic description, sir, of what the CIE is? Just elaborate a little for us.
Yes, so the big goal is to get people who have new ideas, innovative ideas, to get them through to the execution and build out companies. So we hope that the next Facebook, the next Google will come from this region. That will be the great dream that I have. So that's kind of the basic idea. So we provide with guidance on strategy, marketing. We give them the infrastructure to build out the new companies. While it's focused on the students, we encourage local entrepreneurs to come in and take advantage of the facility. That's kind of how we're looking at it.
Why do you think this is needed?
Yeah, so if you think about the economy today, people call it gig economy or automated economy. So things are moving rapidly and changing really fast. So that kind of makes people either terrified or excited. So we want people to be excited about the changes and prepare them how to face these new technologies, how to understand artificial intelligence, data analytics, machine learning, or robotics, and create opportunities from them. So if you look at most of the job descriptions these days, you will always see that they are looking for innovative and entrepreneurial people. So that's what we're trying to build here, and that's why I think it's the need of the day.
Let's talk about some of the highlights. Once completed, there's going to be some really cool things going on there. Tell me about those.
Yeah, so we're going to, so Harrisburg University already have like biotech labs. There's so many different features that we have already built. So the idea here is to connect the makerspace, the active learning labs, all of this together. And this becomes like the coordinating center, which will pull in resources and infrastructure from all across HU. So that's kind of how we look at it. Because my job is to create or empower others. So the tagline that we use for this is empowering innovators to build successful ventures. And that's not just a tagline, that's a commitment we make to anybody who comes in. So that's why we try to have that infrastructure in place.
The advantages for students seems almost obvious, right? But the thing is, this also benefits our region, the Harrisburg region. And can you explain how so?
Yeah, so if you look at, everybody says we want to recreate Silicon Valley. But Silicon Valley has its own unique features. But if you look across the region, you have Austin, which has come up really like a whole lot of innovations, a lot of companies. DC, from where I am, there's a whole lot of companies from that region. So if you look at Harrisburg all over, it's most of the regions where these development have happened, it's around a university, a science and technology university that kind of becomes the hub, and there is all these spokes that develop around that. So that's kind of how I look at it. So Harrisburg and the larger region around that will really benefit from all these entrepreneurs that are coming in with new ideas, and it will create jobs and the economy.
It's terrific. And like I was sharing with you, what Harrisburg University is doing is just remarkable here in our area. Thank you for sharing this latest adventure with us. We'll be right back with our second half hour.
Thank you.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of Panic with Friends. I'm your host, Jay Mohan. And the idea of this conversations is to bring together leaders from different industries to hear their stories of navigating through these uncertain times, right? I mean, everybody is, so that's why we came up with this term, Panic with Friends, because we kind of make the assumption that we're all friends, panicking together in this because we're all in the same boat. Everybody's trying to figure out what's the best way, when will this end? And it also gives us a lot of comfort when we find that, the people who are running companies also are pretty much in the same boat. They're also trying to figure out, because there is very little information around the whole healthcare crisis that we are dealing with. Simple things like, I was on a call, on a Zoom call, where I had created a background, And then after that, I was on a Google Hangout call where I completely forgot I didn't have the background, and I got up and left, and somebody said, "Hey, Jay, we realize you are dressed up to the top, but after that, you're just wearing, boxer shorts." So that was an embarrassment. But, simple things like that to like business continuity, like how do you run business when your customers are not responding? So that's kind of, the whole gamut. And I get, from our last session, a lot of people said it's good to know that we're all in this together, but also they'll pick up some, few tidbits about how all these other people are figuring this out. How does the leadership look at this? Empathy is a word that I keep hearing a lot from the leader side. So with that, I will, hand the mic over to our panelists who give a little bit background about themselves, and maybe we'll just go in an alphabetical order. So Eric Dar, who is the president of Harrisburg University, is here. So Eric, want to say a few words about your background, what HU is all about, and what has changed in your role, I guess, in this time?
All right. Well, thank you, Jay. I appreciate that. Yes, Eric Dar, happy to be part of the Panicking with Friends here. For those that don't know, Harrisburg University, newest institution of higher education in Pennsylvania in over 100 years, will educate between 9,000 and 10,000 students this year. We started in 2005 with 73, we called them pioneers, 73 students, and 5 programs, all bachelor's degrees. And this year we'll have nearly 30 bachelor degree programs and nearly the same number of master's degree programs and multiple PhD programs as well. A campus in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, also in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and working on international expansion activities. And so, prior to the pandemic, the university was working on a number of strategic activities for expansion, as I mentioned, overseas, so in Panama and in the UAE. We were looking at construction of a $100 million new academic building to focus on health sciences in Center City, Harrisburg. We were looking at adding new faculty and building new programs. And with the pandemic, my job has changed, as Jay said, from leading these strategic initiatives and expansion of the university to focusing on the core business of the university and preservation of what we're doing, as well as scenario planning for what the summer and the fall may look like for the core business of the university. So it's changed dramatically in terms of my area of focus, right? Presidents of universities do typically 2 or 3 things, and they revolve around strategic activities. The other big thing is often fundraising in a variety of ways, meeting with alumni or meeting with major donors, meeting with foundations, corporate partners, those sorts of things. Well, all of that activity has ceased, and so it's the role has changed. It's become much more operational in focus, and in some sense internally focused. Just again, trying to make sure that the trains keep running and that we plan for what a very uncertain future looks like. Jay, can't hear you.
You're on mute, Jay.
Sorry, Kishan, so the same question, a little bit about your background, your company, and
Sure.
how has it changed? I
All
think there is some pivoting that has already.
All right. So again, thanks for this opportunity to be here with all of you. It's really exciting. My name is Kishan. I'm the founder and CEO of Ion Idea. We are a software engineering services firm. I started that off about 2 decades back. We do have our offices, customers, and employees in several countries now, including the United States, in Europe, in some countries in Eastern Europe, and then in India, and also in Singapore. So we work with customers in the tech, telecom, financial services, healthcare, and education sectors. And we have not only services for them, which is our primary bread and butter business of doing software engineering for them, but we also have several products in the education sector and in the enterprise emergency management sector. So Gardon, which is a product that we spun off, is an enterprise emergency management solution. It also is a personal safety and security solution now. And we have a suite of education products also for the higher education. So that in a nutshell is my background. I live in the Northern Virginia area here and you know, have grown-up kids who live in San Francisco right now. So.
Interesting to hear. How has, before I jump to Scott, how has your role changed with this?
Well, till now, I've been spending most of my time traveling and being with my customers in all these countries. And most of the time, I've been on the plane or in a hotel. Of course, COVID, you know, has put me in my home here. I'm here most of the time doing video calls with customers and also with my employees. You know, it's been an interesting exercise because you know, we've been through this kind of situation 2 times in the past, not as severe as this COVID situation, but you know, I'm sure all of us here know about what we had to go through in 2008 and in 2001 timeframe. So, and in fact, even in the early 90s when we started our business, you know, there was a minor recession. So, well, things have changed a bit, and I'm spending a lot of time with my employees now, in addition to spending time with customers. So, and I can go into that in more detail later on. So.
Yeah. Thanks, Kishan. So Scott, coming to you, the same question, and you are actually in some ways in the middle of this. So, you know, as a healthcare company, tell us a little bit about.
Sure, Jay, thanks. And again, thanks for having us as well. So, yeah, so my name's Scott Gatos. I'm the Chief Technology Officer at Highmark Health. And so Highmark Health is a conglomerate of a handful of companies, a number of companies that are in the health insurance space. So that's where, you know, folks would probably recognize Highmark, Blue Cross Blue Shield, also United Concordia Dental and the dental insurance space, HM Insurance Group and reinsurance. We also have companies in the Allegheny Health Network, which is a network of 9 hospitals in Western Pennsylvania, lots of different clinics as well. And then we have a third organization that is HM Health Solutions, which is really our technology solutions, some of the products and services that we make that power and run our insurance businesses and our healthcare delivery businesses. We also sell those products and services commercially in some sense. And so this entire Highmark Health conglomerate is really about 40,000 people, spread mostly around the eastern U.S. We also have, you know, a handful of thousands in our India contingents as well. And my job, you know, really as the CTO is largely kind of what you would think it is. You know, it's sort of what is the overarching technology strategy of the organization? How do we drive all of these companies forward? How do we benefit all of the members and patients, really customers that these organizations serve and such? And so I've been here for about coming up on 4 years. Spent the better part of the last 30 years all in technology, spent a number of decades at HP and a number of startups as well, like Kishan. I hailed from the Northern Virginia area for about 13 years, but we're back in Pennsylvania now for another 14, 15 years, however long we've been back. But interestingly, you know, Jay, you asked about how things have changed. So oddly enough, you know, the role hasn't changed so much. It's just like Eric said, we focused on a few different things now. So piece parts of our strategy are still very much in motion, but there have been some really large changes in where we need to focus our capacities. So a great example would be like in our hospitals business, and very specifically in things like telemedicine. So telemedicine is not new technology. We've had it around for quite a long time. But when you roll back the clock 8, 9, 10 weeks, on any given day across the thousands and thousands of physicians and hundreds of thousands to millions of patients, you know, that we serve through our companies, you might have had 5 to 10 video visits a day. right, across clinics, through outpatient consults and what have you, maybe 5 to 10 in a given day. And now, roll forward the clock, and we live in a place where, we're sort of confined to certain areas. How do we still see our doctors and such, assuming it's not an emergency room? Video visit technology has taken off. And so now we go from 5 to 10 a day to over 2,000 a day. That we're doing. Same technology, nothing overly innovative about it. It's already been here. It's just how do we work that appropriately into our workflows. So we start to change our focus a little bit on things that we already have, but where do we need to focus more attention on? So it's been a really interesting transition. That's one of the just sort of hit you in the face things that we need to do to better serve the community, especially in the areas where we have folks on the ground driving and delivering health care to really take care of the community.
Well, that's really interesting, and one of the things half kidding, but there seems to be more and more people from the Northern Virginia DC Metro coming over, whether it is Eric driving it or Harrisburg University driving it. So Kishan, at some point, maybe you could be a donor to HU and become part of this great area. So having said that, Eric, one of the questions that the whole word "panic with friends" came from something that I heard from a Silicon Valley group of investors who are sitting on hundreds of millions of dollars, who already had a portfolio they were planning to invest, and then they quickly realized, well, with this, the whole thing might shift, and the companies they were thinking of investing might not be the right ones now, and there might be other opportunities. And at the same time, everybody's kind of hunkering down. So everybody's trying to balance, Eric mentioned about the whole, now inward-looking operations focus. And people freak out, everybody, employees, vendors, customers, everybody is freaking out like, if I call HU, will somebody respond? The same with HU's, customers or Kishan's customers and the employees. And since I'm part of HU, I at least have some insight into how empathetic Eric approached some of these challenges. So Eric, you want to share a little bit about how you look at the
Right. So, in the higher ed space anyway, you can read and pick up across the country higher ed institutions of all sizes, shapes, and descriptions doing things to reduce expenses and save expenses, and in many cases revenues are down millions, if not tens of millions. I've even seen estimates of big public universities north of $100 million, and take all sorts of actions from reducing programs to furloughing employees to cutting projects to all sorts of activities given the uncertain future and given the revenue losses that they've already incurred in the current semester or the current time frame. And so before Harrisburg University took any action, one of the things that we did was to survey staff and faculty across the entire university to get a better sense of, on the ground, what's the impact. So really, is the work proceeding, our projects proceeding, our variety of activities proceeding, from an educational perspective, we were better prepared than most. We were already serving thousands and thousands of students online, and so it was not a difficulty for us to move the entire university and all of our educational activities online. That's different than many other universities that had to patch together technologies and spend millions of dollars in order to even put any effort or any activities online. And so, from that perspective, I think we were prepared and we were fortunate. But again, back to Jay's point, so before we took any actions, we did a lot of conversations internally about what and how and the time frame. And one of the key, characteristics or desires that came out across our employee base is that equity was important, and right, so if we took actions to reduce expenses or we took actions to change activities, there was a sense that we were all in this together, and that employees wanted there to be a sense of equity across the employee base. In other words, don't just furlough 50 people, and those 50 people feel a lot of pain, and then the other 600 don't, or whatever the case may be. So that was one of the important characteristics before we made any decisions. But the institution has done a variety of things to save expenses, and as I said to our employee base, look, the things that we're doing to save money may save somewhere between $3 and $4 million. I would rather have that $3 or $4 million in the bank come September, when we know how to invest the money. It's not about saving millions to keep the lights on or the doors open. It's about saving millions so that we can make smarter investments for the future, when we know what a more certain future looks like. And that's the spirit in which we took any actions to save expenses.
Yeah, so that's a great point. And Kishan, coming to you, are you, because you have operations spread all around the globe, and so are you looking from a cost-cutting perspective? How are you managing that? And what's, like Eric said, are you hunkering down for investments when all this clears up? How do you manage?
So a couple of things. One, first of all, on the customer side, we have our customers in different countries have reacted differently to the situation now. We have to be empathetic to each and everyone on a case-to-case basis, and then, be flexible so that, we can continue working with us. We've already been working with them for 5, 10 years in the past, and we don't want that relationship to go away because of this particular economic situation right now. For instance, one customer came back and said, hey, and it's interesting that, the U.S. customers responded very quickly to it. Most of our U.S. customers, right at the very beginning. The first day it came out that, we had to stay at home here, then I got a call from U.S. customers immediately saying that, our revenues are going to take a hit. We are not certain. So let's renegotiate some of our engagements, et cetera, et cetera. So that's at the U.S. customers, but not so with our European and our Indian and our Asian customers, for example. So when one customer came back and then they really panicked, they said, we don't know what's going to happen in the future, and then we want to stop all engagement with all vendors. So I actually had to dig deep into it and then talk to them, and then finally find out that we could just scale back some of the engagement with them, give them some discounts, and then actually continue working. But lo and behold, some of these customers that came back and then asked us for the discounts, etc., came back again a week or two later and said that, hey, with this new arrangement that we have with you, we actually want to engage you more and then do more business. So in other words, our revenue actually, didn't take a hit. It actually went a little upwards, whereas, our margins took a hit though. But nevertheless, there's still sufficient margin for us to continue to employ all our existing employees. See, we are in a unique business because being in a services business, our people are our assets. We don't want to just jettison them right away or on a small downturn. Our people are our real assets in our technology business, and then it's difficult to hire them back also. And moreover, what we see is many of our customers are investing in technology too. So whether it is in AI, ML, or whether it's in big data sciences and so forth, so we really need those resources also. So what I went and spoke to all my employees, did a lot of video conferences with them, wrote to them, and then explained to them the situation, right? And then told them, this is the candid situation. We don't know what the total impact will be, how long and how deep it will be, right, because of COVID. But at this moment, we are doing all right. I told them, while there are some revenue hits, but there are some revenue growth also. So I told them that at this moment, we are doing all right, but I don't know what's going to happen in the future. So what we asked our employees to do is, work harder and smarter right now, right? So lo and behold, I have more than 1,000 employees today who are coming in, each one working an additional 10, 20 or more hours a week, to help us, build out our products faster, to help us in our sales and marketing efforts, and to help in building proofs of concepts that we can offer to customers and prospects at no cost to them, so that, we can strengthen our relationships with them. So that's where we are right now. But I've also candidly communicated with them that, there may be furloughs, there may be some compensation cutbacks so that we don't have to let people go and all that kind of stuff. And they're ready for it. They're prepped for it, they're primed for it, but, we're not pulled the trigger yet. And then we'll pull the trigger if necessary. As far as investments into other opportunities, very interesting. A lot of startup companies out there, and we've been in here for two decades, so we're no startup, but a lot of startup out there are having problems getting funding right now. So there are investment opportunities there. So we are looking at that too, and then we are figuring out how to budget for those kind of things. So.
Yeah, that's good to know, and we should certainly talk because HU certainly have some interesting startups that we are incubating in here for sure. And I'm happy to give you an insight into some of those. It's in the augmented reality, machine learning spaces, some interesting ones. So Scott, the same kind of, the panic among your employees, the vendors, the technology, and yours is a big firm, and I'm sure there's a lot of moving pieces.
Yeah, I'll tell you, Jay. Well, so speaking of panic with friends, right? I don't know if you just saw that there, but I, disappeared and went silent, and for about a minute, because what seems to happen every day, right, is that my local ISP, right, despite my 500 megabit connection that I have to the house, which is enough probably to run a small data center, decided to just drop that to about 10 kilobits, for about 2 minutes or so, and everything just shuts off. But we're all back now, so it's good. So a little bit of a panic, but I'm back. But speaking of, how we do all of this with our employees, like we said, it's about 40,000 employees. Now, 15 to 20,000 of those, right, are at hospitals, right? So that's not so much a remote working condition, except for those that we try to do various shifts. The more telemedicine we do, great. But by and large, right, those folks are on the front lines, and that's where we are. But then that leaves, roughly speaking, 20,000 others who are remote. And so on any given day, we might have 2, 3, 4,000 that are remote. But when you go from 2 to 3 to 4 to 20, all at one shot, there's a little bit of a panic, that goes on. My gosh, can we handle this? What can we do? And so the good news is that after a handful of days, we felt that everything was in pretty good shape. But the way in which we started that, and it was a little bit not great at the beginning, a little bit of revolt in all of us as employees, we actually split up the employee base, and we said, hey, listen, we need to make sure that our folks that are servicing our customers and our clients on the front line, make sure that they have all the appropriate access that they need during quote-unquote normal business hours. So we kind of broke up the day, and we said, look, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. East Coast time, that's roughly when we need to make sure that these folks can make sure they have the right network access that's there. And then other folks, whether it's, say, doing software development or other things that are not necessarily directly customer-facing, you can have access to the network resources 6 p.m. To 8 a.m. Eastern. And that was at first met with, oh, my God, what do you mean? I have to work a night shift to be able to do this. And folks were a little bit upset at first. And the intent was never to keep that going long. That was just, let's make sure all the resources stabilize and everybody is comfortable working. And after a handful of days, a week and a half, 2 weeks, and we realized that everything was going to be okay, we sort of did away with that. But as we did away with it, and then people started getting used to working, this other shift, if you will, to, for these teams, for these groups, they actually really like working this, differential shift, if you will, and can they keep doing that? So we're like, well, sure. If that works, for your productivity and for the way in which your customers who are consuming your things care, then great. So while at first it seemed like a really bad idea and nobody really wanted to do it, now we have full-on teams that are like, yeah, this is just how we work now. And so there's been, initial panic, but it's turned into sort of a serendipitous benefit to the organization to say this, we can actually make all of this work. So that was a really interesting change that we went through.
So Scott, I'm curious, are you now even thinking about, doing away with offices and, perhaps working a little bit differently and, changes your view maybe on real estate, right?
I'll tell you, Eric, that is a hugely important and very real question that we are working through, right? Because as everyone, right, we're now starting to have the conversation that says, okay, given whatever the appropriate and safe rules are for when we reopen office space now. Again, set aside hospitals. Those are a different animal, right? But when we reopen office space, what does it even look like? What roles actually need to be there? And, what roles might never need to be at an office again? And we are honestly, seriously considering how does that play out? So our workforce placement, physical placement, is, I think, going to be a very, very different footprint as we move forward here, despite, when we will reopen physical facilities at different places, right, around the planet, whether it's, here where I am in Pennsylvania or our offices in Chennai or Hyderabad or what have you. So, yes, we absolutely are, thinking about what does that look like? In terms of physical placement and what is truly needed, where folks have to be in a physical location or where the roles simply don't matter, and we can be as productive as ever and move forward that way.
Yeah, so I think, Eric, that question actually kind of segued into my next question, which is around innovation, which is my favorite topic, which is where I hope this quickly comes down to. What's some of the unique things you have seen within your organization, or because you are leaders that have visibility across other organizations? So what are some of the things that you have seen out there from a pure innovation of how work is changing, how people are doing?
In terms of, innovative practices, one of the things that, I've seen is teams that have goals that that were physically co-located, didn't feel the need to have regular check-ins. And, sometimes certain deliverables in that team would continue to slip. And because there weren't regular check-ins, that could go on for a period of time. Now in a virtual world where we're all separated, right? A lot of teams, now I'm speaking of Harrisburg University, that, maybe didn't meet regularly, now meet on a weekly basis and have regular check-ins and are in some sense more accountable and more structured in a digital world than they were when they were co-located. Because I guess the belief was, if you're co-located, then you can just see somebody in a hallway, and maybe the informal communication networks would suffice. Well, now it's these more formal networks that are digitally supported, right? That's what we rely on, and that creates communication in a different way that has actually, for us, increased accountability and increased, in certain areas, team and project output. So, it's a good lesson, I think. I'm not sure it's innovative, but if it's a good lesson for the management of teams, and particularly when you're trying to pull together multiple disciplines and employees from multiple areas to tackle complex problems. How do you do that, right? In a quote unquote normal world, we have multiple communication channels that you can use. Today, we're now much more limited in terms of how we can communicate with each other and accomplish these things. And I think, that's a good lesson learned right there. I'd say, small things now bring joy that didn't perhaps before, right? So inside of Harrisburg University, we use Microsoft Teams. Well, as a technology platform, one of the big announcements a week and a half or so ago was, customized backgrounds, like you could do in other platforms. And man, you would have thought people were giving away, free donuts or something, right? It was, yay, I can now do, my own custom background. So that's where a lot of innovations are happening, now, in terms of, how do you put backgrounds into into the files so that they can show up when you sign on to Microsoft Teams. Jay, I'm not sure that's the kind of innovation, world-changing innovation you're looking for, but it does give you some insight into the world we live today and how these small things, matter to us.
Yeah, and along with that, I think, one of the things, at least I'm seeing also at HU, is because we have already been online, I think our students and faculty were slightly better positioned versus when I talk to some of the other universities. The biggest challenge there is the faculty. The students probably are more comfortable with technology, but many of the faculty who are like tenured, who has been around for a long time.
Well, I'd say, again, in the business of education and training, right, having a consistent set of tools that you can rely on, and a consistent set means that you have platforms and tools, features and functions that students and faculty can become comfortable with and can become quite good at using. I know of other universities that, the students are forced to learn 9 or 10 different technology platforms because that institution had never put anything in place in a significant way, and the faculty were all of a sudden told, well, go figure it out for yourself, right? So they all picked their favorite things or whatever they were comfortable with, and well, now you're, talk about from a customer perspective, right? If the student is the customer for a university, right? You're now telling that customer, well, I'm sorry, it's convenient for us to be able to use 9 or 10 technology platforms, but for you, too bad, so sad, you're going to spend, the next however many weeks trying to figure out how to work these 9 or 10 platforms, right? So, we didn't have that problem, and we didn't force our students into that circumstance. And certainly you can't optimize outcomes, learning outcomes, when you're trying to educate digitally across that many technologies. It just doesn't work, right? So I can imagine, right, similar circumstances in other industries where, if you don't present your clients and your customers with a unified or a consistent technology base, right? I'm sure, Scott, right, across your million customers, right, you tell them all of a sudden, hey, if you had never had a digital platform, all of a sudden, you're going to use 10 different things, and you can, right, log in, and, from your perspective, trying to make those things, secure and consistent and accessible would have been just a nightmare, right? So it's, yeah.
So, Scott, since, you're kind of positive, you want to follow up on that same thing, like, because what's the innovations you're seeing? And, as CTO, I'm sure you are focusing on that, because you talked about the telemedicine and, the 5 to 10 videos going to 2,000. And I think kind of hearing from you and then, going to Kishan about, because he's supporting clients like yours and others. So it'll be interesting to.
Yeah, it is interesting, and I'll say that, going back to that telemedicine example, it's not like there was some new fangled technology that we had to put in place. It was stuff we already had, just using it differently. And so what we're starting to see is the innovation is coming into the evolution and the changing of our business models and how we're actually utilizing what we have and how we approach things, right? So that was one, our business model of how we use telemedicine. Another one we just talked about, what is our business model of workforce placement and what's there. But I want to go back to something that I think you used the word, Eric, I think I heard you say empathy in there somewhere. This is a really interesting phenomenon, right, that's coming around how we work together with one another. So when it's around the proverbial water cooler and such, yes, of course, folks talk about their families and things and what have you. But now, in settings, we see a lot of people's families every day, right? You're on some large Google Hangouts or some big Teams meeting or what have you, and there's people walking around in the background and such. If you don't have, one of those backgrounds, we're starting to really figure out, like, hey, this whole concept of work-life balance, it has become even more a bigger deal. Yes, it's very interesting that everybody's working remotely, and working remotely when kids are at school or spouses or partners are at work, that's one thing. Working remotely with a full house of people is a completely different animal. And with kids in school though remotely, like Eric was just talking about, like here I know at our place we've got two, that are in college, we've got one in middle school, we've got one in elementary school. They're all at school, all day long, and you've got folks that are working around. So how you work, like how that workplace actually works itself out for everybody in school is a process that we see evolving here. And so I see a lot of that changing. And it's funny because you said, hey, you're the CTO. What's the new interesting tech? It's not that much. Like, it's tech that we've already had. It's just we're using them very, very differently. And things are getting used a lot more, and certain things are getting used a lot less. So it's the human side of this change and the business model side of this change where we're seeing a lot of that innovation come about.
Yeah, that's so. Kishan, you probably are seeing customers kind of similar to Scott, where they are using technology in a different way.
Absolutely. So first, I have to concur with Scott and resonate what he said, that a lot of what we have been doing, we internally in our company and our customers, is getting done more of. And there's innovation on your operational side, and there's innovation on your technology and business side, right? On the operational side, work from home has gotten people thinking, hey, this is actually helpful for productivity, because these kids don't have to commute 2-3 hours a day to work and back. They can be more productive as long as we can ensure that they're really working their 8 hours and being putting in their time there, right? So that's number one. So we ourselves as an organization, and discussions with many other organizations, to help them make telework actually successful, make it very productive over the long run. So as a company, we, for example, have decided that we used to allow telework for 1 day a week, right? So that, but now we are thinking of making it at least 2 to 3 days, and then having them come to work for 2 days, so that they can still have that face-to-face and physical interaction now. That's there. So that leads to another interesting problem, which also Scott mentioned, which is real estate. You have so much real estate that you have leased or own or whatever else. What do you do with it? So we can do a hoteling concept and then actually reduce our burn rate on real estate, for example. So that's another thing. So that on the operations side, there are many such innovations happening. And on the technology side, like contactless is kind of a big thing right now, because people don't want to touch your elevator buttons or touch your biometrics or whatever else, right? So contactless payment systems, companies that are in digital payments, they are very upbeat about their opportunities, for example. And other areas which includes, for example, telecom customers are more positive about investing more in 5G technologies, because there's so much more demand for bandwidth and stuff like that. So we see an uptick there in telecom. And of course, we don't have manufacturing customers, but I believe that 3D printing is going to be something that's more everywhere. It's going to be everywhere, actually, after what has happened recently. And some other areas like telehealth. Yeah, I mean, by the way, we do have a little product on telehealth for mental health, for teleconsulting. So we see more interest in that product from customers. So these are the various kind of things that I'm seeing from a technology point of view. And from our services side, where we build software for our customers, we see a lot more interest in our customers in investing in data sciences, AI, ML, and big data and stuff like that, even more than before right now. So again, like Scott said, these are all technologies that were there earlier. Now they're being amped up, and people are using more of it. And ourselves in our own products, for example, in our Guard-On product, we built into it. We offer this to enterprises for keeping their employees safe and so forth. Right? That's the main market for this. So we have built in solutions so that when employees come back into the workplace later, so that it can automatically help them with social distancing within the workplace. So if two people come close to each other, more than 6 feet or 10 feet, then it kind of sends them a little alert. So those kind of technologies, we are building it into a platform. Pandemic information, news about pandemics, there's so many disparate sites out there that give pandemic information, but now, that information, we're kind of piping it through our solution to get it to get it in the hand of our customers. So some of these things, and in our education products, we actually have built in remote learning solutions into it, built in LMS and the remote learning solutions, because we have about 100 colleges and universities as customers for it, and ours is mostly an academic ERP. There's ERP on the operational side and ERP on the academic side, which includes curriculum design and then examination management and digital valuation and so forth. So that solution, we have put in an LMS, which is for remote learning. So some improvements in our own products, but we see our customers also doing the same in their businesses, though.
Very cool. So because you mentioned about the whole, the real estate and the pandemic informations and the social distancing. So, which brings me to the, the kind of the post, because we are almost, 12:46. We got about maybe 5-10 minutes. So Eric, the question is have you started looking at what the reopening looks like? And I think the role, as you mentioned when you started out about, how you were looking inwards, I think the leader's role have also changed in some sense, because now you have to worry about social distancing and who comes in and the temperature checks. There's so many pieces of guidance or information that's going out there. How do you see I know you don't have an exact answers, but how do you see from your perspective how universities in general?
Yeah, look, we made the decision a few weeks back that the whole summer will be online, so that'll get us through August. I think a lot of people believe that there'll be a second and then maybe even a third wave of this. What does that look like? Is it as serious and severe as what we're experiencing now, or something slightly less? But I think as universities, we need to be prepared for that consequence. There are some trends in higher ed that are becoming apparently clear. That is, parents and students are much less comfortable sending their kids or the kids themselves going some long distance away from home, which means be prepared to service students in the Pennsylvania region in a way that perhaps we weren't thinking about before. I think that's an interesting trend to pay attention to, not just for us, but across higher education. But what it means is, as for Harrisburg University, we need to be prepared for. It's not going to be just one day, right? A switch flips and we go back to the way it was. That's not what's going to happen. It'll be, when the government changes and allows us to go back to work, it'll be a phased approach. So it won't be everybody comes back on a Wednesday. It'll be, certain parts of the business come back 1 week. Another part of the business comes back, at some later point. Maybe, as we just discussed, certain parts of the business or certain employees, they don't come back. They continue to work remotely, and the way that the business functions just changes. So I think that's what we're preparing for, is a phased implementation back to some parts of the business working face to face, and other parts continuing as we see it today. And in the business of education, we need to be prepared for multiple future worlds, some that probably look like a blended version of it. Some set of students will continue to be online, maybe from here forever. Another set of students, particularly those that are focused on labs or things that require hands-on experience, we figure out how to teach those sorts of topics in a more traditional face-to-face way.
Yeah, so Scott, that's, so it's a great segue question, which I think I want to ask both of you, Scott and Kishan, because so what do you see as the post-pandemic world, or how it evolves, or when things get normal, or what that new normal is? And what are some of the, based on your experience of what you're seeing, what's some of the new skills or in demand, whether it is soft skills or, hard skills, technology-wise or otherwise, that you see there will be a demand? Because from a university's perspective, it'd be great.
Sure. Yeah, Jay. So I'll start. So I mean, everything that Eric said, I think, is spot on. It's actually all the same things that we're thinking about, as we reopen offices. I think the thing that I would add to that is, we talked a little bit about earlier, which is, what does that physical space look like? Think about what we've done over the past, 10 years, where we've sort of gone, to very open, collaborative offices and what have you. They're very, very different. And in a post-COVID world, or an ongoing COVID world, what does the office space look like? I was talking to an industry analyst earlier today, and she said people are calling it the return of the cubicle, right? Where you've got, walls in between you and the next person. And it's really interesting and compelling to think about, what does that physical space actually need to look like, right, to create the appropriate social distancing and safety that's there. And, Eric brought up the same point, which is, okay, what I just said is a little bit longer term down the road. Places won't physically look like that the day you open it and decide that somebody is okay to go back in. But what does need to happen then is, what is safe and socially responsible testing? What does that look like? How do we make sure that everybody is okay to be around one another? There's a lot of that really still needs to go on, and I think that's going to be with us for some time here, right? Because as we all have seen, through various news outlets and such, you have the idea of vaccination. I think ultimately we'll get there, but that's best case, 10, 11 months away, right, from where we are. And so what does the next, 10, 11, 12 months look like? I think, things will clearly, I would think, open before then, but what does open mean? What does it change about the physical workspace? What does it change about our testing and such? But from a skill set perspective, we already covered some of those soft skills. We're learning a lot of those now with a almost completely and utterly distributed and remote workforce. But from a pure technology standpoint, one of the things that I would say is that, and we've talked about this before as well, executing more and more things around our own cloud strategy and where that's been going, and the usage and the orchestration of various cloud services to enable new business functions, new customer functions, what have you, that is only going to continue to grow more and more and more. Now, that's not all that different from where we already were, but that's a really useful sort of part of the strategy that says, when I said my job didn't change all that much, that's because our cloud strategy and executing it is still what it is. It's just accelerating, with the need to leverage more and more, of our partners in cloud services. So those kinds of skills, cloud orchestration, cloud engineering, cloud architecture, all of that is, if it was, it was hugely important already, it's even more important, right, as we go forward in a sort of post-COVID world. So I'll just leave it at that. I'll let Kishnan, jump in with others, but that's one that jumps out at me.
All right.
So Kishan, the same, one, what are the skill set that you and your company would be looking for, or what you're seeing as changing? What are some of the programs, that the university?
So I'll answer the second question first. How do I see the post-COVID world? Businesses and individuals that are adaptable and flexible will win. That's key. It used to be the survival of the fittest, and it's now the survival of the most agile and flexible. That's going to be the case. There will be forced entrepreneurship with all the layoffs that's happened, not only in the United States, but world across. There'll be forced entrepreneurship. So people should be able to, do more gigs, for example, either start their own business or get onto the gig economy train. And that's going to happen. More and more of that. In fact, we as a business ourselves, have tapped into a lot of gig workers for some of the peaks that we are seeing in demand in our business process outsourcing businesses, for example. So that's one case. And from a more, people will want to probably live more holistically, I think, more consciously, living in more consonance with nature, and knowing that, their actions impact. And many of them have actually seen the benefits of this work from home, in the sense to the environment, reduce pollution and a whole bunch of other things. So that may stick on. So there may be more of that. Work from home and all those kind of situations will continue on. It'll just accelerate. And there'll be new supply chains. Will everybody? I think most companies will start thinking, should I be totally reliant upon China for all my manufacturing? So that's a question. There may be countries other than China benefiting from this, moving away some of those manufacturing away. So that could happen. From a technology perspective, the ones that we see a more demand for, that would be beneficial for universities to look at is in the areas of data sciences, big data, AI, ML, and machine learning, and all those kind of stuff. And also in telecom, in the 5G related areas, we see that cloud computing, big, both Amazon, Azure, and even Google, more and more solutions, because that provides a business continuity for most of our companies. If you're on the cloud as opposed to having your own systems. These are the kinds of areas, and I see technology. Your university being in tech, you're in a great place because tech's going to implementation of tech is going to accelerate. Robotics, because robotic delivery of stuff that's going to go forward in a big way too. And of course, there's on the healthcare side, telemedicine and anything else. The devices that are needed to enable telemedicine, and it's not just a video, but there's a whole bunch of devices and everything that'll be needed at home and on the physician side. And there'll be medical devices. That'll be an area of growth. And there's a whole lot, 3D printing and a whole bunch of other things too. So.
Well, thanks, Kishan. I think we're almost at time. I'll ask about any last words, but the thing that the takeaway from this is, there is, like Scott and Eric mentioned, empathy is a key word, which Kishan also talked about, living in touch with the nature, and, people seems to be, this has actually hopefully helped the people to be more positive, more empathetic to the others. But the other part is, the entrepreneurship word that Kishan used. This is one of the things that I would love to follow up with Kishan and Scott and the others in future conversations around, how do because like you said, there are so many people out of jobs, and there is going to be innovations happening out and creating new ideas, and how can bigger companies like yours help that, and how does universities plug into that? And then some of the programs that you talked about, because Scott and I had this conversation before around the cloud services, and Kelly Logan, who is part of the HU, and we have talked about this, about putting a program together, and the AI, the machine learning part that Kishan mentioned, HU already has that. So it's, for me, what I look at is, what's going to come out of this? What's some of the new cool ideas that, Kishan mentioned about the 2008 crash, and out of that, after that, there was so many new innovations, new companies that came out. And healthcare, I think, Scott, you were right in the middle of it. I think that's one of the areas. I think.
No, agreed. I agree with all of that. First of all, just thanks again for having us on. Hopefully, it was helpful for everyone. I always find a lot of value in this as well, just sharing ideas, and especially where we are today. So thanks so much.
Thank you, Jay. Appreciate it. Thanks, Kishan, and thanks, Scott. Appreciate your
sure thing. Thanks, and happy to help anybody who is interested. Kishan at ionidea.com is my email. Feel free to write to me, and we're happy to interact and do whatever I can to help.
Yeah, I'll make sure, all of those panelists, we kind of, having the contact information and share it. And thanks again for all of you guys. We're right up on the clock, so I know you all have busy other schedules. So thank you again, and hope to bring you back, at some point.
See how good our
post
crystal ball
Corona,
was.
maybe
Okay,
a few
all right,
months
thank
from
you.
now.